I was taken aback by President Obama's public endorsement of same-sex marriage on Tuesday. That would be Tuesday of last week. I bolded this. My feelings of disappointment arise not only from the fact that I don't agree with the president, but also because his announcement came so suddenly and without any warning to the black church community. The church at its core is to be a refuge for all of God's children, including homosexuals. There is a gay community within the black church. We can't ignore them or bash them. However, the church has no shades of gray when it comes to marriage. Our faith reserves marriage for a man and a woman. President Obama, as a product of the black church, is fully aware of that. Knowing this, the president made this endorsement without calling or preparing any of us. Many of us, for many of us, it felt like a betrayal. Again, those are the words of Pastor Jamal. Bryant, he felt jilted by Obama, but he says he still believes in the president. You know, he goes on and he's like, I still believe in the president. This is not the time for us to become disengaged. We cannot afford apathy. We have too much to lose. Joining me in the studio is Pastor Drane of the House of Joy. He has brought along with him his youth pastor, also at the House of Joy, Nicholas O'Rourke. And we're going to talk about the church's stance and also the community response from the black community about President Obama's endorsement of gay marriage. Welcome to the mic, Pastor.
Thank you so much, and I want to just thank you and the station once again for tackling the hard questions and for making room on your show today for our community and for myself, my youth pastor, to come on and give you some varying viewpoints on this very pivotal issue that's facing our community. I guess my opening remarks would be that this is a pivotal moment in history, in the history of our country, the history of the world, really, and in the history of our city, not only in the political landscape, but I believe, and I've said it before, that this is a time of transition all the way across the board. We see our leadership transitioning. We see our culture and societal norms beginning to shift. And I think that pivotal moments in human history require respectful, thoughtful engagement across differing opinions. And so something like this, I mean, this has been one of the most hotly contested issues, not only of our generation, but of generations past. Gay is not new.
No, it's not.
So I think that it is time again to talk about it, and the president pushed it into the spotlight last week.
And Biden before him.
And Biden before him. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, you know, if I could impress anything upon our community, first and foremost, even before we dive down into the granular things that this digs up, November is incredibly important to our community. And I don't believe that we should allow rhetoric to keep us from the polls. Because to remove your endorsement of President Barack Obama to not go to the polls is actually a vote for his opponent. And so we have to wait,
It's like GOP, yay!
Yeah, and I don't know that I'm so yayish over the GOP, over Mitt Romney, and even on the surface, what looks like a staunch conservative who is against gay marriage. I'm not so sure, because while he was governor of Massachusetts, we know that Massachusetts became the first state to allow legislatively same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. So I'm not buying the cheese on that side of the equation.
Exactly.
Either.
It's like, which Romney is it? I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, as I think this through, let me first say, I do represent God. I'm an ambassador. I'm a clergyman. I'm a pastor, and I think I owe it to my congregation to say that I don't agree with the president's decision to support same-sex marriage. And as I look at it from a biblical perspective, I don't see a basis biblically for same-sex marriage, for gay marriage. I don't believe the Bible. There is no concept of gay marriage in the Bible. But if you look at Matthew 19, verses 4 and 6, is where we have the biblical definition of marriage, being that he created male and female, and he said that a man should leave his parents and cleave to his wife. They should become one, and what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So we do have a biblical definition for marriage being between a male and a female, and my Christian faith suggests that I should support that regardless of what anyone does next door, around the corner, or in Washington. And that's what I would call for all Christians to do, is to stand on the line of biblical truth. But at the same time, when I read my Bible, I see a blind Bartimaeus who is on the side of the road crying, and Jesus said, what is it that you want? He said, I want my sight. And the Bible says that Jesus was then moved with compassion, and he gave him his sight. And so I think that Christians have to also be compassionate to the plight of all humans who are fighting for their rights, just as we fought for our rights. We know that fight all too well. And though I stop short of comparing this fight to our fight, there are similarities that we can't ignore. And I think that all humans have the right to equal rights, R-I-G-H-T, under the protection of the law. And I think that is, and Pastor O'Rourke can chime in here, I think that's really what is at the core of this issue, that when the gay and lesbian community are wanting to be recognized with the same rights and protections that are conferred upon all U.S. citizens once they're married. And we're talking about 1,100 rights, Social Security benefits, veteran benefits, health insurance, Medicaid, hospital visitations, state taxes, retirement savings, pensions, family leave, and the list goes on and on.
To be able to decide for self.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the major issues that we run into is in the black church is that somehow we assume we get the impression within ourselves, this notion that we live in a vacuum, and that this nation is a Christian nation found on Christian doctrine, and that is not the case. That couldn't be farther from the case. This nation is actually founded on Christian principles, but not our Christian doctrine. And so if we are, in order for us to even worship how we worship on Sundays, whether it be at the House of the Joy or any other church in the country, we are able to do that because of the Constitution of the United States that allows us those rights and privileges to worship as we would like to worship. And when we start getting into the business of trying to legislate morality, we're starting to cut ourselves off at the hip, because these are the very same things that happen to us as a people, as black folk, in years past. The Bible was used from Paul actually said, slaves should obey their masters, for that's good in the eyes of the Lord.
It was used as a weapon instead of a book of law.
Exactly. And so anytime we use as Christians, especially as black folk, anytime we use the text, I believe we have to put it through the filter of the cross and the love ethic of Jesus Christ, that will allow us to take those things that would be oppressive to minorities and the disenfranchised and the lost, and to find and recognize that they have a place as well, and they do too have rights under the government.
Why is this issue so doggone divisive, like a burr under the skin of the black church? I mean, it's not like, well, he said it best, Pastor Jamal Bryant, there are homosexual people who are in the church. We celebrate them when we want to. If they're leading the choir, bringing in the Spirit of the Lord through music and song, if they're taking the choir to the choir championships, it's all good. If they're hooking up the First Lady's hair or any of those creative things, or if they're doing other wonderful things in the church, we celebrate those things that they do then, and it's all well and good and fine then. But then you go at them like they're the holiest terror on the planet, and that you've defined it as sin, and you've lifted that sin up as some sort of super sin amongst other sins. Why?
Well, there's two different conversations within the one, and you've highlighted them both. We have an issue, a societal issue, where roughly 2 to 10% of the U.S. population is gay and lesbian, and that constituency is fighting for their rights. And no one wants to change the American identity from a country that is founded on religious freedom, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
For
all.
all. Absolutely.
And so as the groundswell goes, for whatever the cause is, whether it was women's rights, whether it was black rights, today it's rights for gays and lesbians, as the people voice their concerns, this country is one who has compassion, who listens, and who does what the people wanted to do. And I think one of the things that Barack Obama has said in defending his stance is that he wants to be on the right side of history. But then when you really begin to peel that onion back, you see that there have been 32 states who have voted on this issue, and 32 times the people have voted against it, against changing the definition of marriage. Now, that's the one side of the coin. But then when you bring it into the spiritual lane, into the black church, it is a different conversation altogether, because we have our own society, if you will, in the church, which mirrors the society in our country, and we probably have about the same percentage, maybe more, maybe it's up to 25% of homosexuals practicing in the church, and as you said, even in leadership. But the church being an autonomous body, being a from a polity standpoint and a governing standpoint, each individual church has its own standard. And if you look across the spectrum of the black church, you will see some black churches do just as you said, and they will, quote unquote, celebrate or allow different people to be open in their sexual persuasions. Even in the pulpit, there are some pastors recently who have come out and who said that they are gay, and they're dealing with splits in their congregation. Some have fallen who have not come out, but it has been revealed, such as Eddie Long and the other, that there are these demons that plague the church. And we have to face it. We have to face it like we're doing today. And sometimes God in his sovereignty will bring issues to the light for us so that we must face it. And I think this past Sunday, just about every pastor in the country was facing it one way or another. And regardless of where they stood, I think that's a good thing for us to have to wrestle with what God is saying and where we will stand as clergy.
Let me throw something out at you. You know, there's always that mantra. Love the sinner, but not the sin. Heard it over and over and over, to an overused mantra sometimes. There's a lot of wiggle room in that. Let me see what you think about this. With there being tons of wiggle room in love the sinner, but not the sin, that wiggle room may allow the faith-based community to practice its own form of sanctimonious bigotry and prejudice in this particular area. What do you think?
I think it's frustrating, and this is the reason why I think all of this whole issue is really interesting. Jesus Christ never said a mumbling word about homosexuality. Never, not once. If we're going to talk about the Bible and what it says, let's be honest. He never said a mumbling word. The Bible does speak to same-gender sex, but Jesus never said a mumbling word. However, Jesus was very vehement about divorce. He said, Moses said this of old, but I say to you. Moses allowed a little room for divorce between opposite gender marriage. But Jesus changed that and said, with the exception of infidelity, you shall not get divorced. And yet the divorce rate is what?
Over 50%.
Over 50%.
And 46% among Christians.
And 46% among Christians. And it's mind-boggling to me that we get up in a theological tizzy and start having convulsions over something that Jesus never spoke on. Not saying that it's not wrong or whatever the case, or it's not addressed in the Bible. But we turn a blind eye and act like there's absolutely nothing wrong with something he was vehement about.
Yeah,
Our
exactly.
priorities are jacked, and we need to check ourselves.
I'm glad you went there, because I have that in my notes to address that too. Why don't straight folks worry about themselves staying married? You made a vow. Work on your straight marriage. Or, wait. We, as black women, I'm going to talk for sisters for a minute. We are the most unmarried folk on the planet. So if you have made the vow, stay married. Let's work on that before you start dibbling and dabbling in gay marriage. Or what's the problem that we are not getting married anymore, and that it's just something that we're not valuing?
I think what's at the core of both of your comments is the fact that gay people are not the cause of all of our problems in the black community. But marriage is under attack.
Yes, it is.
This is one way that is under attack. It is also under attack by the comments that you just made about our divorce rate and us not being able to be married, not wanting to get married. It is also under attack by black men being an endangered species and being incarcerated at alarming rates. It is under attack by many ways. And I think the balanced conversation, the wholesome conversation, is to take this conversation and make it a much broader conversation, and not to just try to isolate this or even isolate our president, because what we don't want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. Because as Jamal Bryant pointed out, this is a president who has been good to our community. This is a president who has been good for our country, and I'm speaking for myself, but the facts are there, and I like to applaud decisive leadership. I think that is something that should be applauded. And we just have to understand, in this country, in this time, there are hard decisions to be made. And President Barack Obama is not Pastor Barack Obama.
No, he's not. He is a gifted politician.
And so I applaud him on the one hand for being able to stand up and take decisive action. And this is not the first time he did it. With bin Laden, there was some question about how that operation would go. And he stood up and said, with great risk, that this is the way we're going to do it, and gave the green light. And when I look at his progression in coming to this stance, I do believe him. I take him at his word that he has wrestled with it. I just don't agree with the conclusion that he's come to, that marriage must be redefined. I don't believe you can redefine marriage, because marriage has its origin in a biblical sense. Marriage is a part of a constitution of the theocracy of God, and so we can't change that. And so if you want civil liberties for all people, which I do believe in, then I believe there's other ways that you can skin that cat.
All right, we are talking about gay marriage. President Obama came out last week and said he endorses it, but he did say, one of his hesitancies was that, this is the lawyer in him, a well-educated lawyer, that he thought civil unions would be enough and he wouldn't have to go here. But it became not enough. Political move? Maybe. Not for me to say. But it became not enough because folks were still not getting their rights. We're going to go to the phone lines after we take a quick break. Joining me in studio is Pastor Drane and his youth pastor, Nicholas O'Rourke, from the House of Joy.